When I was a little girl, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to leave something behind that could make a stamp in time. And I wanted to use my hands in the forming of history. And I still do. But when I was a little girl, I had a plan. Do this, get that, be better, meet every single expectation, right every wrong, fix the problems on the outside without needing to look within, and don't complain about exhaustion. I entered college with this plan to be great, and have lived way too many years feeling like I'm hitting a wall because my plan to achieve greatness was two-dimensional. It had no skin and no bones, no breath of life in it, all hanging on me to start and perform and finish it. In the guise of being excellent for Christ, I proudly lied myself into a corner of my own sin, burnt out, and sat there in ash long after the fire of my heart to change the world was extinguished. Lost, afraid, and ashamed, the older girl asking the little one why and how we had failed in such a worthwhile pursuit to change the world. Why and how do we change the world? These movements, fueled by the dreams and schemes of victories yet to be, began in college dormitories. These revolutionaries, sparked by big speeches in campus commonplaces, began with small ideas in classroom spaces, and in each of these cases, students changed their nation. They were teens and 20-somethings who defied their status as students to expose injustice, to shed light on inequity, to unveil bias and cruelty, and change the course of history. Our history has become a stream of marches marched, of battles waged, and wars won. But this history marches forward in the footsteps of a son, roads to victory, stepping in line with the author of time, someone who turned the tables on his culture too. But his, the revolution of all revolutions, was sparked by an eager desire for us to be able to taste, to see, to touch the brim of him, he who created and crafted us all for this kind of world-changing greatness. Greatness encapsulated in this, the two-word plot twist of all plot twists, twisted and intertwined throughout the story of all time. Christ came. Christ came and flipped history upside down. In resistance to the status quo, he chose to forgo a campaign for a political position of power, and instead, he answered injustice with a crown of thorns on his head. When others washed their hands of him, he set his to the healing of wounds that enslaved not just a generation, but an entire creation. Manifested in a body bleeding, beaten raw, this kind of greatness didn't begin with a protest or silent sit-in, but a manger filled with straw. When others betrayed or denied, he, with the revolutionary love of a bridegroom in search of his bride, reset history's tone in this. The King of Kings chose a cross for his throne, and in so doing, greatness became his alone. And here's the cool part. He didn't stop there. He couldn't stop there, because he didn't just come to die for us. He came to revive for us a mission, a purpose, a story based in the reality of our why and how, his kingdom in the here and now. Christ came to transform another kind of student. These disciples were 3, 12, 72 students who in the newness of life with him said yes, dropped nets, and followed him to the reaches of our globe to begin a movement of their own. By raising families and serving communities, they wove worldviews into culture. By dreaming dreams, they championed the marketplace, and by solving problems, they fashioned governments. These disciples were few, but they were students too. And I say yes. It all begins within because it must begin with him. Before we see change systemically, we must change individually. Before we march on broken roads, we must know him who wants to right them. Before we lead movements across our nations, we must know for whom they were created. I say yes. To live lives of greatness, we must first walk in his. When I was a little girl, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to leave something behind that could make a stamp in time, and I wanted to use my hands in the forming of history. And I still do, only now I know how and for whom.